So, Catherine, in the Central Criminal Court on Monday, with Mason's mother, Elizabeth Conway, now she delivered a victim impact statement.
Yes, she gave a lengthy victim impact statement about Mason, and the atmosphere in court that day, I don't think I'll ever forget it. I sat at the back of the courtroom, not in the press box, so you could see the entire room. And she got up, and she was sitting in the public gallery, and she got up from her seat, and she had a picture of Mason in her hands, black and white picture. So she gets up and she leaves her seat and she walked past Tegan McGhee. She didn't look at her, and she got into the witness box, and she placed this picture of Mason on the bench in front, facing the entire courtroom, and she began to talk, and she started off by describing the joy she had in 2016 when she gave birth to her little boy, Mason, how proud she was of him, that he was a beloved brown-eyed boy. Then she described his early years, the kind of child he was, a normal toddler, like toys, like sweets. He was a very caring and loving child. And she said the entire family just got so much joy from him. She said she was really protective of him. And she had suffered with postnatal depression at times. And she was, like I said, very protective of him. And at one point, she had this premonition of him, seeing him in a little white coffin. And she said that she suffered with mental health issues herself. And she said that she had an episode in September 2020 with her mental health, and that, through consultation with Tusla, Mason was placed with his father, who she said she really trusted to look after him. She wasn't well herself. Her child was going to live with his father and her partner, and she said in the witness box that she actually remembered being with Tegan McGhee on one occasion and hugging her and saying, I trust you. I have nothing against you. They have this moment. She said it really haunts her now. So she described that day when she got the phone call about what had happened to Mason. She said, it was the worst day of her life. And she went to the hospital, and she said, she'll never forget what she saw when she walked into the room and saw him hooked up to all of the machines. But she said more than that, he was absolutely black and blue. And remember, she hadn't seen him in a very long time before this. There had been video calls between Mason and his family every Sunday, but those had been restricted in the sense that every time they'd been set up, Tegan and JP had said that he wasn't available, that he was in his room, he was being bold. Nobody had access to the child, nobody had seen him. So this was the first time, the last time she'd seen her child, he was perfect. So she sees him in the hospital bed, and she was crying when she described all of this, recalling it all. And she knows straight away something's really wrong. So she said she went to JP in the hospital and asked him what had happened, and he said, he'd fallen from the bunk. And she said, no, that could not be. He couldn't end up like he is what's happened. She wasn't getting any answers. And she also described in court being told essentially that there was nothing else that could be done for Mason, that they were going to have to make the difficult decision to switch off his life support machine. She said at this point, and this is something that also haunts her, that she let JP and Tegan into the room alone with her son. And she said, she often thinks about what they said to him that day, knowing what they'd done to him, and that she's forever haunted by that, and that she took her child in her arms, and watched his heartbeat go down and down and down. And, it was very, very emotional. She was emotional saying all of this in court, but looking around the courtroom, again, a lot of professionals in that room, professional journalists and Gardaí and barristers, and you could see on everybody's face just how upsetting hearing all of this really was, and seeing the impact it has had on Mason's mother and the entire family. And in court to support Mason's mother, Lizzie, and Mason was Tegan McGhee's biological sister, Shannon. And she's completely disowned her sister. And at one point during yesterday's hearing, after the sentencing had been concluded, she got up and shouted over to her sister, "I hope you're rot in hell." They've completely disowned her. Tegan's foster parents were also in court yesterday in support of Lizzie Conway and Mason, and they made it very, very clear that they want nothing to do with her anymore.
Now, there is another aspect of this case that continues beyond the sentencing, and that's the role of child welfare. Because, as we know, there was engagement with them around Lizzie's mental health and who was minding the child. It also emerged, as Eoin was describing, that there were previous incidents of abuse here of Mason, including an incident that was highlighted to Tusla some months earlier. So what's happening here in terms of Tusla's role in this case?
Well, as you said, Tusla were involved here. There were interactions. Tusla were involved in that decision to place Mason with his father and Tegan McGhee. So they're involved from the get-go. And during the hearings, it emerged that Tegan McGhee herself had told them that she had kicked Mason in the months prior to his death. A disclosure that you would imagine was extremely serious. But with all these cases, the criminal process has to conclude before Tusla can essentially investigate itself. So all of these interactions, I'm sure, will be looked at. And the question has to be asked: what went wrong? What went wrong when she admitted to being violent toward a child? What steps were taken to protect him? I don't know. Don't have those answers at the moment. In all these cases, we've seen a number of them last year. When a child who's had interactions with Tusla dies, there is a review by the National Review Panel. I expect there'll be one in this case. Those reviews take time and they have to be done when the criminal process is concluded. There have been a number of them done in other cases, part published, part not published. But we have had, unfortunately, a spate of these cases with very young children who have been known to the state, had interactions with state bodies, who have died at the hands of the people they've been in the care of, or people have known to them. And I suppose one child is one too many, but recently we've had 4 of them.
So, Catherine, presumably in the coming days, Tusla will have to announce a review yet again of this case, and we'll await to see what comes of that.
I would expect that there will be. We should hear more from Tusla on this case. Our colleague Wayne O'Connor has a story today about the interactions Mason's grandmother had with Tusla, the alarm bells that she was raising. She had interactions with Gardaí over Mason's care. So all of those interactions will have to be looked at. We'll have to find out what was done, if anything, what wasn't done, and why we now have a 4-year-old child who is dead.